This episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi everyone, I'm Tanya.
And I'm Talia.
And we are Crimes and Consequences, a true crime podcast. Hi Talia.
Hi Tanya.
How are you?
Today's a great day.
Awesome. And I'd like to welcome everyone else back.
Welcome.
Thanks for listening this week.
Thanks for being here, Tanya.
You too, Talia.
Thanks.
I couldn't do this without you.
I couldn't do it without you.
I know. It's big lovin' right now.
It's because it's Friday.
I know. I'm ready for this week to be over. Anyway.
You got some true crime for me or what?
I do.
Perfect.
And before I start the story, I would just like to remind everyone to please subscribe or follow on whatever app you're listening to. And with that, on Christmas Eve, 1985, Chuck Cleveland needed a haircut that just couldn't wait.
On Christmas Eve?
On Christmas Eve. He lived in Chester, Nebraska, which was about 12 miles south of Hebron, which is where the closest barber shop was. Before he left, Chuck grabbed his shotgun and put it in the gun rack on his Ford pickup.
Absolutely. That's what you've got to do when you're getting your hair cut.
I know. Well, he brought it because he planned to hunt pheasant in the long stretches of untouched prairie fields as he headed to Hebron in the hopes of adding a bird or two to the Christmas feast. Okay?
There were different times.
Yeah, apparently he did this often.
Okay.
He took the scenic route to Hebron, searching the fields for the orange and gold ring-neck pheasants, when a flash of blue caught his eye. It was a spot of color that was out of place against the bland landscape, and he stepped on the brakes and backed up to take a closer look. He parked his car along the side of the road and got out. The wind was cutting through him. The wind chill was 30 below zero.
What?
Yeah, and he zipped up his parka. Curiosity got the best of him. He searched the ground for what he had seen, and he immediately recognized what it was. It was the body of a child dressed in blue sleeper pajamas. And those are the ones with the feet in them?
Yes.
That zip up?
Yes.
Chuck thought it was a little girl with ice glazed over her hands, body frozen stiff.
Oh, man.
Her face was tilted in a way that Chuck couldn't get a good look, but he noticed that the child's other hand looked to be over her heart. She was laying only about 15 feet from the roadside. It's pretty
Just
close.
like dumped on the roadside.
Yes. And Chuck didn't move any closer. Partly because he had seen enough, but also partly because he didn't want to disturb any evidence that the scene may still hold.
That is so heartbreaking.
Chuck owned a truck stop in Chester and had a two-way radio installed in his car. Walking back to his car, he radioed his assistant Joyce and asked her to call the sheriff. He told her he had found a body and gave his location. He told her to tell them he would wait for them to arrive.
That'd be a long wait.
Oh. Thayer County Sheriff Gary Young received the call from dispatch around 10 a.m. that Chuck had found a child's body. Sheriff Young called Dan Weaver to come with him. Dan was the county attorney and coroner. That's quite the job description.
Wow.
They drove out to the field and met Chuck, who pointed them to the child. Sheriff Young walked closer to the girl and got a closer look at her face, or what was left of it.
Oh.
I know. The child's nose was only cartilage now, with the soft tissue of the nose and mouth eaten away. Her teeth were bucktooth and the upper lip was missing. Her eyes were closed. Her right hand was resting on her lower abdomen and her left arm was tucked under her body. So it wasn't quite on her heart. But that's how Chuck saw it. Purple lines circled her neck and there were bruises on her forehead. Sheriff Young's thoughts drifted to who left this child in the field. She seemed to have been placed where she lay very carefully.
Oh, so she wasn't just dumped kind of a thing.
No, and the person appeared to almost want her found soon after leaving her because she was so close to the road.
And she's wearing blue, like you said, that would stand out.
That would stand out. Sheriff Young called the state police and the crime van for backup, looking for some help and guidance in his first probable homicide. The state police officer showed up, and as they took a look at the body, one of them commented that they thought maybe the child may have had developmental disabilities based on the sleeper PJs she wore, saying that his daughters wouldn't wear them past 3 or 4 years old, and this child appeared older. But I thought,
that's a real stretch. Yeah.
The sleeper was unusual to the investigators because it was spotless. It seemed like it was brand new. The cuffs and collar were white with thin stripes of blue, and it was just pristine. The feet of the pajamas were also gleaming white. It appeared the child had never stepped foot on the ground or any floor for that matter, and she had been carried to her final resting place.
So did they find footprints in the snow?
No, they didn't. The crime scene investigators continued to comb the surrounding areas, and one of them examined the child's body closer, hoping to find a clue as to what exactly had happened to her. As one of them unzipped the sleeper, he realized that the child wasn't a girl after all. It was a little boy who wasn't wearing any underwear, which seemed unusual to all of the investigators. After the initial examination, the child was loaded into a body bag and taken to a nearby funeral home.
It is a little strange not to have underwear.
I know. A little weird.
Not completely unusual, but...
No. Chuck Cleveland, who found the little boy, left the crime scene and decided the haircut could wait. He just really wanted to get home. He did. He was like, yeah, this has been a day, and I just want to check on my own kids. He had 3 teenagers. When he got home, he checked in on them as they slept in, as teenagers do, and a wave of relief washed over him. He gave prayers of thanks to the universe for keeping his children safe as he thought about the child abandoned in the field all alone.
I mean, it would change your whole perspective on the world. It's one thing to talk about it, to hear about it.
Right.
It's another thing to see it.
Yeah. It must have been extremely disturbing. Word soon spread throughout the small town of Chester about the dead little boy, and the community was shocked at the news. The local Methodist minister, her name was Jean Samuelson, she heard about it while running an errand at the bank. As she prepared for her Christmas Eve service that night, her thoughts were focused on the child. She reminded her parishioners that while they were celebrating the birth of one child, another was found dead in a field.
Man, that's just
what a bummer. I know. So sad. I mean, this whole town was
a little down.
Yeah. This whole town was very, I don't know what the
moved.
Right word. Very moved. Thank you. That's a really good word. They really were moved about this little boy.
How could you not be?
I know. Sheriff Young attended the child's autopsy, and it was performed at Lincoln General Hospital in Lincoln, Nebraska by Dr. Porterfield. As the body bag was unzipped and his body was set on the examination table, Sheriff Young noticed that the child had blonde hair, even though out in the field it seemed darker. The freckles on his face were more prominent in the bright light of the room. Dr. Porterfield got to work and remarked that the boy was about 10 years old, roughly 50 to 60 pounds, and he appeared to be healthy.
He was about 10?
Mm-hmm. He appeared to be healthy, well-fed, and clean. Dr. Porterfield determined field mice were the culprit that caused the boy's upper lip, nose, and right cheek to be missing.
Oh, damn.
I know. Identifying marks were limited on the child. There was a circular scar on the boy's right forearm that looked like it could have been made by a lit cigarette, and a small tan birthmark on the boy's right calf. As his organs were removed and weighed, Dr. Porterfield noted his stomach was empty and there was some congestion in his lungs, which was still partially frozen.
What's that mean? Had a cold?
Yeah, maybe he had a cold. Something. The boy's anus was slightly dilated, which made the law enforcement officers present think that maybe the child had been sexually abused before death. Dr. Porterfield, however, indicated that there was no trauma in or around the anus, but a swab was taken of the area just in case.
This is going to sound really strange, but I do have a little knowledge on
anal dilation.
I have read before that sometimes it will dilate after death a little bit.
And yeah, that's what the doctor ends up saying. Yeah.
Let's move on.
Despite what appeared to be bruising on the boy's forehead, Dr. Porterfield stated the child's head showed no damage, conflicting with the initial thought that maybe the child had been beaten to death. Next to be examined was the boy's hyoid bone, and it was completely intact, again conflicting with the theory that maybe he was possibly strangled.
So he wasn't strangled, he wasn't beaten.
Dr. Porterfield ruled that the cause of death was undetermined. The police were baffled. If the child had died by natural causes, why was he left in a field?
And if a child dies from natural causes, you're going to have some sort of sign of what that natural cause was.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Cancer or some sort of meningitis. You're going to see that on the autopsy.
Yeah. And there was nothing. If his death was caused by someone, why isn't his body telling the tale of that ordeal? It was just really confusing.
And if he did die of natural causes, why would someone just dump his body?
Right. Exactly. Why is he out in a field somewhere instead of being reported?
Or at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. The swabs taken of his mouth and anus came back clean, so it was unlikely that he was sexually abused. And as you indicated, Dr. Porterfield had said that slight dilation was probably part of the normal dying process. The little boy's case was not going to be an easy one to solve, especially considering no missing child reports had been filed with the police, at least the local police, and no one seemed to recognize him. As time passed, the citizens of Chester and the neighboring towns feared that there was a child killer on the loose among them. The state police had an artist make a composite sketch of what the boy looked like before the animals had gotten to his corpse. Taking some artistic liberties, the artist made the sketch and it was distributed on a flyer throughout Nebraska and other close-by states. The flyer generated 150 leads in the first week of its distribution, and Sheriff Young kicked his investigation into high gear. On January 28, 1986, about a month later, he held a press conference that showed a new photo of the boy that was done by an artist who airbrushed facial features over the child's morgue photo.
Oh.
I know. The sheriff also announced that it was time for the boy to be put to rest. They hadn't buried him yet. Since his body had been found, he had been examined several times. Pastor Samuelson and her parishioners, as well as the citizens of Chester, had wondered what they would call the child at his burial. She received a letter that addressed this topic from a Missouri minister that said they should call him Matthew because it meant gift of God. The community donated everything related to Matthew's burial: the plot, headstone, and one mother in the community donated the suit he would be buried in. The headstone read, quote, "Little Boy Blue, abandoned, found near Chester, Nebraska, December 24, 1985, which we have called Matthew, which means gift of God," end quote. There was a space left on the tombstone for the child's birth name, which could be engraved on it should he ever be identified. Pastor Samuelson presided over his funeral. People magazine did an article around May of 1986 about the story, but the child's case ended up going cold. Reader's Digest did an article in their December 1987 issue that featured the story, and it was called, quote, "Little Boy Blue of Chester, Nebraska," end quote. At the time, Reader's Digest, do you remember Reader's Digest?
I used to love Reader's Digest. I was like 10 years old, and I loved Reader's Digest.
I know. At the time, it reached 16 million homes and had a readership of about 50 million people.
Everybody had one.
Yeah, everybody read Reader's Digest.
It had everything. It had jokes. It had long articles.
It was awesome. I think there was even fiction sometimes. I mean, it had something for everyone. The story that appeared in Reader's Digest prompted a man named Abe Petersheim, a man belonging to a Mennonite society in Ohio, to call Sheriff Young. He told Sheriff Young that Little Boy Blue had some similarities with a boy he knew named Danny Stutzman, whose father was Eli Stutzman. Abe and his wife had babysat Danny until he and his father moved west, and Danny had stayed with foster parents in Wyoming until Eli had picked him up on his way to Ohio just before Christmas 1985.
Foster parents?
Yeah, they weren't official foster parents.
Okay.
There were no photographs of Danny, to Abe's knowledge, because Eli and Danny belonged to an Amish community in Ohio, and Amish people don't get their photographs taken. But Petersheim knew the foster parents. They were Dean and Margie Barlow, and he gave Sheriff Young their phone number. Sheriff Young spoke to the Barlows, who were school teachers that participated in an informal kind of foster parenting program in Wyoming. For several years, they had done it. They had been assigned to Danny, and after also reading the article about Little Boy Blue in Reader's Digest, they too saw some similarities between the unknown child and Danny. They had written a letter to the Chester Police Department that included Danny's school photo, but there's no Chester Police Department, and Sheriff Young knew that because he was from the state police. So he ended up contacting the post office, and they tracked the letter down.
So they addressed it to the Chester Police Department
in Nebraska. Yeah, so it kind of didn't go anywhere.
Okay. Wrong address.
Yes, and the post office had it. Soon, Sheriff Young was given the letter from the Barlows, and it included a photo of Danny from school. He stared at the photo, and he just couldn't believe it. He said if it wasn't Little Boy Blue, that child had a twin named Danny Stutzman, so he was convinced it was the same child. While Margie Barlow had been in contact with Sheriff Young, she also wrote a letter around this time to a man named Amos Gingrich. Amos was Danny's maternal grandfather. His daughter, Ida, had married Eli Stutzman on Christmas Day 1975. Eli and the Gingriches were Amish, and prior to marrying Ida, Eli had left his life with the Amish. There were many reasons why he did, but most of them had to do with him not liking the restrictive life that the Amish led, and he also enjoyed driving and drinking and basically sowing his wild oats. You know, you and I talked about this once where when you're in the Amish community, you're given some time to go out, I guess, and experience. They call people that are not Amish English. So you go out and experience life with the English.
And then you make a decision.
Yes. However, Eli ended up returning to his Amish community, and when he did, he promised to marry Ida. Ida had stuck by him during the time when he had been banned from the community.
How long was he English for? Months? Years?
I don't think it was years, but I do believe it was probably not just a couple months. Okay, so it was probably somewhere in between. Like, I want to say probably like a year, because he got a driver's license. He was living somewhere else. So he did have time to have like a little bit of a life. He had a job, those types of things. So he definitely had a life. As I said, Ida had stuck by him during the time he had been banned, and she would write him letters begging him to find God and return to his life with the Amish. Before their wedding, Ida told her sister Lydia that she knew Eli was a weak man, but she thought she would be able to help him find his true path.
She's going to change him.
She's going to change him. As a wedding gift, Ida's father, Amos, had given the couple several beautiful pieces of oak furniture that he had made for them. There was a bedroom set, a dry sink. Do you know what a dry sink is?
I do not.
I looked it up.
I'm dying to know.
It is for people that don't have plumbing. So it's kind of like a sink area, like with a vanity, and cabinets. You'd put in like maybe like a half bath or something. And it's got a sink. It just doesn't have any running water. You would put your own water in it and use it to wash. Or sometimes you find them in kitchens.
Oh.
To like wash your vegetables and stuff like that.
Okay.
You don't have running water though when you use it. So he gave them a dry sink and a hutch. A few weeks after they were married, Ida discovered she was expecting their first child.
Wait, Amish people don't have indoor plumbing? Is that a modern luxury, indoor plumbing?
I can't speak for what the Amish do today, but maybe back in the 70s, it was less prominent.
Okay, that would make sense.
I think some of them do. I don't think it's against their religion to have running water. I think some of them did have it. I read a book for this episode. It was called Abandoned Prayers, An Incredible True Story of Murder, Obsession, and Amish Secrets by
Amish Secrets
by Gregg, Olsen. And in the book, he did describe there were some people in the community that had indoor plumbing. Okay. So a few weeks after they were married, Ida discovered she was expecting their first child.
That didn't take long.
No, she gave birth to their son Daniel, named after Ida's brother, on September 7th, 1976. When he was born, Eli had two unusual requests for the doctor who delivered him.
Oh, shit.
It's not bad. First, he wanted his son vaccinated to be given the usual round of vaccinations given to newborns. And second, he wanted his son circumcised.
Okay.
Before I tell you more, we're going to take a break.
I want to take a second to thank Surfshark for sponsoring this episode. Surfshark has a great product. Surfshark provides you with a VPN. What's a VPN and why is it important? A VPN is a virtual private network, and it's important because it helps stop hackers. But there's a lot of other cool features with a VPN. I can have a virtual location pretty much anywhere in the world. And what makes that cool is it seems like I'm in Maltese right now, which throws off hackers, but it also does something really cool in regards to entertainment. I can now access shows on Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and other streaming platforms I couldn't access before because it's all based on your location. For example, if I was in Maltese and I'd already seen all the true crime shows from Netflix based in the United States, I could access Netflix Maltese shows. It's all about the virtual location. Hackers, trackers, and malware is hiding all over the internet, and Surfshark will help you protect yourself from them. Get your own VPN through Surfshark, risk-free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you go to surfshark.deals/crimes and enter the promo code CRIMES, you can get 83% off and 3 extra months free. That's surfshark.deals/crimes, and you use our promo code CRIMES. When you do that, you not only help support Surfshark, but you help support us too.
The family of 3 moved to their own farm when Danny was about 6 months old. Ida learned she was pregnant again and was due by Thanksgiving. You would think that having a new wife, a 6-month-old son, and another baby on the way would turn Eli into a proper God-fearing husband.
Not if he's a loser to begin with.
No, and he didn't. Ida was often left home alone in the early months of Danny's life when Eli would disappear for days on end without explanation.
You can't do that when you're Amish.
He did. As the months grew on in 1977, word started to spread around the Amish that Eli was out running around all the time and Ida was home very unhappy. Her parents felt helpless to do anything since Ida was a grown married woman. Ida's brother Daniel would often visit her and his namesake, along with their mother Lizzie. During one visit, as Daniel was working the reins of the horse on their buggy, they were getting ready to leave, Ida confided in her mother. Eli wasn't doing well, and she didn't know what to do. Lizzie comforted her daughter, hugging her and reassuring her that time and prayer would help smooth things over with the young family. But Ida was insistent. She told her mother that she didn't know what to do, and that she believed Eli didn't love her.
Mm-hmm.
Lizzie also didn't know what to do, and she and Daniel lamented over Ida's predicament on their buggy ride back home.
Can they get divorced?
No.
I didn't think so.
They puzzled over why, if Eli didn't love Ida, did he return to the Amish community and marry her? He came back.
Right.
When he came back, it was like right away, we're getting married. In May 1977, Ida and Eli met with a loan officer at the Federal Land Bank in Wooster, Ohio. Eli went to borrow $55,000 to pay the mortgage contract on the farm where he and Ida lived.
$55,000?
Mm-hmm. This was an unusual way to do business. The Amish typically keep their financial affairs out of the hands of the bank, relying on handshakes and promises. They don't usually go and let the English interfere with their businesses and financial affairs. In July 1977, one of Ida's young cousins, also named Eli, and I'm going to call him 2. Okay, the number 2.
Thank you.
Was hired to do summer work on Ida and Eli's farm. Around midnight on May 11th, 1977, he woke and noticed a brightness coming from his bedroom window. When he looked outside, he saw flames and black smoke rising from the family's barn. As he ran down the stairs to go outside, he yelled for Eli and Ida to waken. He noticed they weren't in the home, but little Danny was asleep in his crib. As 2 ran out of the house, he ran into Eli. Eli frantically told him to run to a neighbor's house to call the fire department. 2 ran past the south side of the barn and saw Eli removing farm equipment from the barn. He then noticed Ida laying in the grass, only about a step or 2 outside of the barn. He knelt over her and called, "Ida, Ida, wake up, wake up." He touched her, but she didn't move. And he saw her left cheek and hand were a pink color, showing some exposure to the heat, even though the rest of her face was colorless.
And she's outside the barn.
Yeah, just a step or 2, though. He thought she was too close to the barn and the fire, and he ran to tell Eli that Ida was hurt. When he got to Eli and told him the news, 2 realized that Eli already knew about Ida. Eli seemed mad that 2 hadn't followed his instructions and ran to the neighbor's home to summon the fire department. Sound of the fire woke a neighbor of the Stutzman, Howard and Sue Snavely. Howard rushed over to Eli's farm and didn't see anyone initially, but as if on cue, Eli ran over to him frantic about Ida's condition. "We have to get her out. She's trapped in the barn."
I thought she was outside the barn.
"I know." Well, Howard followed Eli to the milk house that was on the south side of the barn. Do you know what a milk house is?
I do, because we have a story coming up next week where a man was murdered.
Oh, nice.
In a milk house.
In a milk house?
Yes.
So a milk house is where they store the milk. It's usually covered with tile, and it's cooler than the rest of the barn. For everyone else.
I'm an expert.
Wow, we both Googled milk house recently. Eli swung open the doors to the barn, and Howard saw Ida laying on her back.
Where's 2?
2 had run to a different neighbor's house to call the fire department.
So he actually did end up going to a neighbor's house.
Yes. Her feet were next to the door, and her head was farther inside. He could see her prominent pregnant belly under her clothing, and she wasn't moving.
That's right, she's pregnant.
Yes. And this is May, and she's due around Thanksgiving. Eli and Howard went over to Ida to move her, and Eli grabbed his wife under her underarms, and Howard grabbed her feet and legs. As they were doing this, Eli was mumbling something about a heart attack. They carried her across the road to a pasture and laid her body down. Howard impulsively took Ida's wrist in his hand, and he couldn't find her pulse. When the fire department arrived, Fire Chief Mel Wiss spoke with Eli. Eli told Chief Weiss that Ida had woke him and told him the barn was on fire. He told her to go get help with the neighbors, and she left his side. He ran to the barn to assess the situation and found her inside, laying on her back. He figured she must have had a heart attack because of the smoke, and that she must have been trying to save the milk cans in the milk house when she collapsed.
Really? She's going to try to save the milk cans?
I know. Eli explained that Ida had a congenital heart defect and had a weak heart.
That sounds like bullshit. Sounds like bullshit.
The fire department was able to put out the fire, but by the time they arrived, it was just fully aflame. The remnants were still smoldering when the coroner arrived to check things out. She was only 26, so
Right.
It's quite unusual that a healthy 26-year-old woman dies after this barn fire.
And she's not burned. And maybe just a little, right?
She's a little. And I'll tell you what the autopsy showed. It was performed, and it showed that most of her burns were on her left side, the side of her body that was facing the flames during the fire. Some of the skin on her chest had blistered, and her left breast had been exposed, the exposure to the fire causing it to be burned as well. The left side of her abdomen was burned indirectly, but it caused some skin slippage. When she was undressed, there were some burns under her clothing, but they determined it wasn't unusual given she was wearing cotton clothing that wouldn't have provided much protection from the fire itself.
Was it actually flame or just the heat?
I know. I think it was the heat.
That's what I was thinking too, because she was a little outside of it.
I don't think she was ever directly in contact. I think it was just the heat. There were mud smears on her clothing. Again, this didn't appear unusual because the milk house was a damp, muddy area. Ida's forehead showed long scratches from the bridge of her nose to just above her left eyebrow. There was a bloody cut in the corner of her mouth, which happened prior to her death because there was blood on her teeth and gums. Many questions came from the autopsy, such as if Ida's breast had been exposed, that would appear to have happened when she was in a rush and didn't have enough time to pin her clothing correctly. However, Eli had told her to go to a neighbor's for help, and she was very modest, so she would have made sure her clothing was pinned correctly.
Yeah, you're not going to be going to your neighbors with your breast.
I know, hanging out. The cuts also bothered authorities. Eli explained that it was possible that Ida fell in the rush of trying to save the milk cans, but if she had fallen, why was she on her back and not on the front where the cuts were?
Are milk cans some sort of pricey thing that I don't know about?
I don't know. I wondered
Aren't they
that
kind of like
too.
a dime a dozen? I don't know.
I mean, I believe they had a dairy farm.
Yeah.
But how many cans of milk is she really going to save? She's one woman.
It's not like they're going to melt in the fire either. I'm just pointing out they're metal. I mean, I'm
I
not
know.
a scientist.
I'm not a farmer.
I'm
so
not a trained
maybe,
professional.
I'm not a trained professional, but
I'm not a
maybe. I
farmer.
have no idea. The cuts may have been caused by someone or something hitting her in the mouth, but none of this was noted in her autopsy. The doctor performing the autopsy ruled her death was by natural causes, i.e. a heart attack, after being convinced that it happened the way Eli had told the fire chief and investigators, especially after telling them she was also suffering from rheumatic fever at the time of the fire. They were trusting of Eli mainly because he was Amish, and the Amish don't commit murder.
Right.
Right? He's a very trustworthy human being.
Mm-hmm.
However, Ida had a doctor that also worked as an assistant coroner who did question the medical examiner after the autopsy. His name was Dr. Lehman, and he had been Ida's doctor since she was 16, and she was 26 when she died. He asked about Ida's cause of death and was told it was a heart attack. However, he knew that Ida hadn't had a weak heart and was perfectly healthy.
And what did the autopsy show? Did it show some congenial...
They didn't do like a full autopsy.
They didn't?
They didn't. They did not.
Take out her organs,
Nope.
do that whole Y thing?
Nope. No.
Really?
They just did the surface area.
What the fuck is that about?
And it was because Eli said she had to have had a heart attack.
Well, then you look at the heart.
I know, right?
Hello?
This pissed me off so bad.
All right, I'm with you. I'm pissed.
However, Dr. Lehman didn't push this, like knowing that she didn't have any congenital heart defect, because he just gave Eli the benefit of the doubt, saying, well, maybe they misinterpreted what Eli said, and, you know, maybe it wasn't a natural thing that happened. Who knows? But he didn't push it.
It's all because he was Amish.
It was.
We don't question them. They're so righteous, right?
Right. And I will tell you, though, that in the Amish community itself, people did wonder, but no one ever pushed anything about Ida's death.
They knew Eli was a shady fuck.
Yes, they did. And there was a lot of stuff I didn't tell you about him, but if you read the book. Anyway, A little while ago, I told you about how Margie Barlow had not only written to Sheriff Young about Danny Stutzman, but she had also written to Amos Gingrich, Ida's father, about the article in Reader's Digest. She wrote to him and kept him informed of the progress of the case, especially when Danny was positively identified, and police were now on the lookout for his former son-in-law, Eli Stutzman.
How did they positively identify him?
I believe one of his family members ended up identifying him, like in the autopsy photos. And I think it was either Margie, and I know Margie wasn't his family. It was either Margie or Amos who saw the photograph, morgue photograph, and were able to positively identify him. Eli was finally arrested in 1987, so almost 2 years. Danny went without being identified. He was arrested in Azle, Texas. One of the reasons why Eli wasn't found for a couple of years after Danny's body was found was because he was also a suspect in the murder of a roommate of his named Glenn Pritchett.
Another murder?
Another murder.
Does that make him an Amish serial killer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow. That's a new one for our books.
Yes, exactly. An Amish serial killer. Glenn lived with Eli and Danny and another man when he disappeared in May 1985. His body was found May 12, 1985, and when the police started asking Eli questions about Glenn, he fled. Like, he just disappeared, and he would tell people, "Oh, my lawyers told me to get the hell out of town," which is completely the opposite of what a lawyer would tell you, right?
Right.
But he told everybody that, and I'll tell you, Eli was a pathological liar. There was never any truth that came out of his mouth.
I figured that out already.
Eli ended up in Colorado. Glenn's body was found abandoned in a ditch, kind of very similar to how Danny was found. But Glenn had gunshots to his head, and that's how he died. Glenn and Eli were only friends, and I say that because I haven't told you one of the main reasons why Eli wanted to leave the Amish way of life. It wasn't just the religious rules or living without the modern comforts. Eli was gay.
He was gay.
Gay Amish serial killer. He wasn't able to live his life as a gay man.
You're not accepted in the Amish community?
No.
They haven't gotten there yet?
Nope. So when he broke away from the community with Danny, when Ida was killed, he lived his life openly as a gay man.
Poor Danny had to be so confused about the
I'm
world.
sure.
He went from Amish to English to dad likes my mom, dad likes men.
Eli didn't hide it. Not that I think he should have hid it, but he had frequent sex partners that he would meet through personal ads placed in gay publications. And he would travel to other states to meet the men, bringing Danny along for the ride.
What?
And, I'm not saying...
No, we all get it, Tanya. We get it.
But Danny's tagging along. He was present when Eli dated, and in the book I read, many people commented to Eli that maybe Danny shouldn't be exposed to the sexually explicit life that Eli decided to live. But he didn't take their advice. And Eli told somebody at one point he didn't want Danny to grow up and be heterosexual.
Oh.
And I don't know why. So I don't know if that's why he was doing it.
To try to make his son like
thinking that maybe
guys?
He could make his son gay. I mean, I don't know.
Who knows what this fucker's thinking?
Exactly. It was very strange. When the authorities finally caught up with Eli, they charged him not only with Glenn's death, but also felony child abuse and Danny's death. When Eli was interrogated by Sheriff Young about how Danny died, he claimed his son died after becoming very ill with a throat infection during their drive from Wyoming, where he picked Danny up from the Barlows, to Ohio, where he was going to visit his ailing mother.
Why didn't he seek medical attention?
I know. He said he panicked, and so Danny died in the back seat. So he stopped in this field, and he takes Danny's body into the field, and he prayed over Danny's body for hours before he left him in the field, quote, for God to take care of him, end quote.
Oh, shut down.
I know.
What?
And he never really gave an explanation as to why he didn't go to the hospital. I mean, he obviously believed in modern medicine if he got Danny his vaccinations at birth. So that wasn't it. After leaving Danny's body, he drove next to Kansas to meet up with a boyfriend.
Stop it.
Yeah.
God, I hate this man.
And this boyfriend knew Danny, had met Danny previously, and he said to Eli, where's Danny? And he says, oh, Danny's stayed with the family in Wyoming because he wanted to ski. And it's Christmas time.
Why didn't he, if there was nothing wrong with what he did, why didn't you just say, oh, I left him in a field.
Right.
He's dead.
Yeah, oh, he died on the way here.
He's in God's hands now.
Eli was convicted of abandoning a body and failing to report a death, since there was never any conclusive evidence that Danny's death was a homicide. Like, they could never prove it.
Sounds like he probably smothered him.
I thought
Right?
that too.
Poisoning takes a while.
Yeah, and poisoning, I think, would show up. And people in the book were saying that maybe he witnessed something about Glenn's death.
Oh.
You know?
Wait, didn't Glenn die?
He died before Danny in May.
Oh. Yeah.
That maybe he witnessed something and...
I think we just solved this.
I do. Right. Eli was sentenced to 18 months in prison in connection with Danny's death.
Oh, I'm enraged.
The truth about what happened to Danny will never be known, but I do know that Eli demonstrated very suspicious behavior when it came to his son.
He doesn't even seem sad.
No, he told...
Or remorseful.
Right, and he told, like I mentioned, the boyfriend in Kansas, along with family members in Ohio, that Danny stayed behind in Wyoming to go skiing instead of spending Christmas with them. He also told other friends that Danny died in a car accident while staying with the family in Wyoming, presumably the Barlows. It seemed he just had different stories for different people, and it was all bullshit.
So why did he kill Ida? He could have just left and disappeared into the United States and lived his life.
I think he killed Ida because, and this goes along why he left with Danny, because he didn't want his children being raised by the Amish.
Oh.
And I think that's probably why. And Ida was, obviously, he was trapped now. He had a wife and 2 kids. And I think he just... I know.
So he takes his son and then he kills his son.
Yeah, and he had Danny with him for years.
Yeah, he waited years.
He waited years. While Eli was on the run, and while Danny was staying with the Barlows in Wyoming, Eli visited boyfriends in Colorado and New Mexico. While he was in Colorado, he stayed in the city of Durango. And I mention this because in November and December 1985, so this was right before Danny's death, in Durango, there were 2 murders where Eli is suspected of being the killer.
Really?
The 2 men that were killed were friends with Eli. Their names were Dennis Sleeter and David Tyler. On November 10th, a passerby on a nearby railroad saw the decaying body of David Tyler in the bed of a pickup truck parked outside of David's auto body shop, Automatic Transmission Exchange.
Wait, there's a rotting body in the back of a pickup truck.
In the bed.
At an auto body shop?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck is that?
I know. Somebody on a train sees it.
What?
I know.
You can't make this shit up.
You can't. He had been shot in the head. 3 weeks later, on December 4th, 1985, Dennis was working his part-time clerk job at the Junction Creek liquor store when the police responded to a call reporting a robbery and shooting. Police found 24-year-old Dennis's body face down in the basement of the store with 2 bullet shots to his head. According to police, Dennis's friends had come to the store to buy some booze, and when they didn't find him behind the counter, they started looking for him, yelling his name, and they were the ones that found his body. And the cash register was open.
And then so it's shortly after that Danny is murdered, right? Couple weeks.
So during the investigation into these murders, police discovered both men were gay, they knew each other, and they were drug users. It was also discovered that Eli attended a party with both David and Dennis present on November 8th, which was only 2 days prior to David's body being found. A person fitting Eli's description was seen near Dennis's crime scene, but Eli was never charged in either death due to lack of evidence against him.
He knows a lot of people that have been killed.
He really does. Nobody else was ever charged in Dennis and David's death.
So they're cold cases, unsolved?
Yes, they're cold, unsolved cases. Eli eventually was convicted of murdering his roommate, Glenn Pritchett, and he was sentenced to 40 years in prison. However, he was released in 2005 after serving only 13 years.
You're kidding me.
No.
After he got out.
He got out. After he was released, he lived in Fort Worth, Texas. However, he was only out for a couple years because on January 31st, 2007, police found Eli's body dead in his apartment of an apparent suicide. His neighbors had asked the cops to do a welfare check after not seeing him for a few days.
How did he kill himself?
He had cut his arm open and deliberately bled to death.
Oh, my man.
In one of his previous jobs when he had left the Amish, he worked in a hospital or medical setting, so he was familiar a little bit with anatomy.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
What a way to go.
I know. And I don't know why he killed himself, but he was HIV positive, and maybe that was related, but At the time, he was also found with a ton of cocaine in his system.
Well, okay. Wow. So he's high on cocaine and
Decides
slices his arm and just slowly bleeds to death. Why wouldn't you just do all that cocaine?
You're right. Just OD on the cocaine.
Eat it. Just
maybe he didn't have enough.
Stick your face in it. I mean, I'm not trying to.
What a way to go.
Not to be crude, but I'm saying. Well, I mean, you got a couple options. That would be the one I chose.
Yeah, I mean, bleeding
just bury my head in it.
Takes a while, right?
What? Bleeding
to death?
Why, yeah, I would guess.
It would take a few minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Eli was 56 years old at the time of his death. After Eli's death, interest in David and Dennis's case was rekindled. Some believe that the crimes were hate crimes or related to drugs because the word fag was scrawled in blood at David's auto body shop, and a woman came forward claiming she knew the man who said he did it because he admitted it to her. But there was another guy that came forward and said he knew several men who were David's killer and that they killed him because he owed them money for drugs. However, none of these leads panned out, and as I mentioned, the case is still unsolved. After Eli's death, police in Durango got his fingerprints and his DNA and compared it to a bloody handprint that was found at David's crime scene. It wasn't a match for Eli. So who knows? So that is my very sad story about Little Boy Blue, Danny Stutzman, and the Amish serial killer, Eli Stutzman.
Poor Ida.
I know.
How did she die?
I think he hit her over the head.
Okay.
Or hit her in the face.
Because she had that cut, right?
Yep.
From her nose to her forehead.
Yep. And he may have smothered her and then set the barn on fire. I think that's probably what happened.
Why wouldn't he have her body in the fire?
I know. That's what I was thinking. That would be much more
efficient.
Yes.
I mean, to accomplish his goals.
Yes. I don't know, but that's what I think he did. And this case was suggested to us by a listener, Lisa M. So I would like to thank Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa M.
She recommended the book, and I was intrigued.
Well, I mean, it's an Amish serial killer.
I know. Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Who knew?
Who knew?
Before we go, we have some shout-outs to Leah.
Yay, shout-outs. These are some of our favorite people that support us by subscribing to our Apple Podcast channel and or becoming a Patreon member by going to patreon.com/TNTcrimes.
And if you're wondering what the benefits are, is we have over 100 unreleased episodes that you will have access to if you become a member or subscriber on Apple.
You get them as soon as you subscribe.
And to let everyone know, they're the same exact episodes, whether you subscribe through the Apple Podcast app or if you go to Patreon and join. Either way, you get the same episodes.
And you get our public episodes ad-free.
And early release.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of waiting for Monday, you get them on Friday.
Woo!
Woo!
Bam!
Bam. Okay, so here are our shout-outs.
I'm ready.
We have Apple subscribers Mindy T, Angela F, Alyssa E, and our Patreon members Lena S, Allie C, Nick A, Sue M, Kathy F, Tish. I love that name.
Tish the dish. I'm sure people said that to her.
Probably. It makes me think of Morticia in the Addams Family. And you know how much I love the Addams Family.
Yes, you do.
Nina B, Suzanne F, Robbie A, Deb T, Christy J, Sherry T, Dina B, Stephanie M, Brandy M, Massa, Lisette P, Sarah V, Tracy B, Sue M, Tammy S, Michelle H, Linda P, Danielle N, Kristen M, Angela R, Patrick, Kara M, Tamara M, Chrissy P, Amy S.
Damn.
I know, we got a lot this month.
It's not even the whole month, right?
No, right. No, it's only half the month. Jean Marie V, Jessica C, Russ, Dave S, Alexis B, Carmen W, and Shelley.
Woo!
So thank you so much.
Is that Stephanie on that list, the one that sent us that instant message saying she thought we were drunk for the last 20 episodes because we were slurring our words and talking slow? Only to find out she had the setting on speed on slower than normal.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. And you know, Talia and I both listened to ourselves on half speed.
We do sound drunk.
Yeah, we're like, hi, Talia. I mean, it's crazy. If you guys want a good laugh, listen to us at half speed because we sound like we are completely shit-faced.
She thought we were drunk for like 20 episodes.
I know, bless her heart, she stuck with us. She was like, what's the matter with my favorite podcasters?
We've become luscious.
You know, I was like, damn, she thought we were some massive alcoholics. So
you guys can also check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Handle is Hardcore true crime.
So check it out. And
Our website?
Yep, our website, crimesandconsequences.com. And I also wanted to add, if you are an Apple subscriber, please email us and we will give you access to our Facebook page.
Contact at
crimesandconsequences.com. Thank you all for listening, and until our next episode,
don't kill each other.
bye.
Bye.